I give it, but the chief has answered part of my statement. I should have asked to go first. Mr. Chairman, in light of the recent controversy, I take the unusual step of committing my thoughts in writing. I know I don't usually do that. In order to better understand the issues at hand, I consulted with the borough manager, the chief of the Central Parks Regional Police Department, the current and one former borough solicitor, experts in the law, and others. I've also carefully reviewed the 2 draft ordinances prepared by our solicitor and all relevant documents. My position is based on those consultations and informed by my obligation to live up to my oath of office and our shared responsibility to uphold the safety and well-being of our residents. One of the 3 sections of the Borough Code under consideration for amendment or repeal is one section which I'm not certain should be repealed, although you kind of answered my concerns about this. Chapter 6, Part 2, Section 201. This section deals with the unlawful discharge of firearms in Doylestown Borough. The laws of the Constitution of the Commonwealth protect the right to carry arms, but not the unlawful discharge of arms. For this reason, it is my belief that 201 may well be constitutional use of our corporate powers, and it may also be necessary to public safety, although here it is not, so that's good news. As a result, I'm considering not going to repeal it after hearing the chief. I'm probably okay with it. As to the other 2 sections of the code which are under scrutiny, the reasons for their amendment is not the adoption of Act 192 as is stated in the proposed ordinance, but rather the recent ruling of the Commonwealth Court in Dillon v. Erie. As a member of council, I am sworn to uphold the laws of the Commonwealth, and the ordinance struck down by the court this past January cast serious doubt on the legality of our own similarly constructed ordinances. But that case does not force us to repeal 201, although I think maybe we should in light of what we just heard, any more than Act 192 does. So tonight, and I've started to say, so tonight I wish to use the public safety hearing to explore 2 issues. Is Section 201 legal under the laws of the Commonwealth? And is it still a necessary tool for the protection of the residents of Doylestown Borough? As to the previous provisions addressing Act 192, it is not council's place to make legal judgments about the pending case which is not a part. It is not true that our actions regarding the examined sections of the Borough Code should hinge on the outcome of that litigation. The city of Erie, as well as other towns and cities, have been sued well before the adoption of Act 192. Others will be regardless of the outcome of the legal challenge to the Act. Mr. Chairman, I'm object to the draft ordinance proposed by the solicitor, but I will vote, if permitted to do so, for the simple amendment or repeal of certain sections of the Borough Code in accordance with my duty to the people of Doylestown Borough.
Do you want to discuss the difference between the 2 drafts? And
I would like a question. Can I set up a pistol target range in my yard?
No. It's a zoning issue, it's not a police issue, but you would have to have distance and access to safety.
What about 25 feet?
I would suggest.
I've never run across the zoning.
25 yards.
But it would be a zoning problem for us. I'm not sure what the other legal issues would be on a state level, what regulation of shooting ranges. But
I think it would be good if I can't do that.
you can do that. You can have chickens though under certain circumstances.
Okay, that's good.
Mr. Pems, you wanted to make a comment on that?
Yeah, state law forbids discharging a firearm within 150 yards of any structure. So no, you can't have a range in your
I
backyard.
thought that was just hunting.
No,
I thought the state law
discharge of a
only
firearm.
applied to hunting.
You can't be shooting a paper or bandy within 150 yards of your house.
Got it.
Okay? Sorry, no range for you.
But I'll take it.
But if you want to shoot, I can take you to a place.
Yeah, I'll take it.
Is that no other
Yeah,
questions?
it's good.
Okay. Any public comment? Yes, sir.
Question.
Can you state your name,
Yes.
please?
My name is Tom Campanone, and I'm the legislative director of an organization called Pennsylvanians for Self-Protection. We are a statewide Second Amendment group, and we do have members in the borough and therefore under 192, we would have standing. I understand now that there's a second draft of the ordinance, and I have just one, and I'd like to make a comment on that. It states here, the second paragraph from the bottom, whereas the borough continues to believe that such ordinance provisions represent valid and appropriate exercise of the borough's police powers and necessary to fulfill the borough's duty to protect public health, safety, and welfare. My comment is that it's nice that that's what the borough believes. However, I think the law is the law, and I would ask you to strike that paragraph in its entirety, because what the borough believes is, in my view, irrelevant. In addition to that, I do have a 1-minute statement, if you would indulge me. As you folks know, the State Uniform Firearms Act was amended in 1994 and prohibits municipalities from regulating firearms and ammunition in any manner whatsoever. So, Mr. Anson, and I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, Mr. Anson. Doylestown has in fact been in violation since 1994. And although you quickly blame others, this administration, having been aware of that violation, has in fact been complicit in that violation, regardless of who originally passed these ordinances. Rather than respect the law, there were people who were attacked on a public Facebook page. You berated Representative Margaret Quinn and Senator Chuck McElhaney for supporting HB 80, which ultimately was enacted as 192. Yes, we do thank Representative Quinn and Senator McElhaney. These lawmakers voted to put teeth into the existing law in order to stop the political overreach by municipal executives, and I'm appalled by your attempt to demonize it. It proves that you're more interested in advancing your progressive ideology than you are in the rule of law and protecting our rights.
Thank you for your kind words and framing. With regards to our action here, Doylestown Township, Buckingham Township, Plumstead have these same laws on the books right now. This community, the moment we became aware of this through our letter from Divot, we took immediate action. We had to dig deep. My council has never passed an encumbrance in second.
Irrelevant.
I myself am a gun owner and I have a concealed carry permit.
Also irrelevant.
The moment that we saw, please let me speak. The moment that we saw we had these issues, we went and took action and addressed. Our solicitor took action, we went into motion quickly. While other municipalities have sat and done nothing, we took action. With regards to my comments and my criticism of the law, as Mike Fitzpatrick criticizes the Affordable Care Act, I have a First Amendment right, as much as I exercise my First Amendment right and my Second Amendment right. And while that may not please you, and you may disagree with what I have to say, I certainly have the right to express myself and express my concerns that our community would be put at financial risk with this standing, that this would empower attorneys to go litigate against the borough at cost, that we are basically pressured to do this and take immediate action, which we are doing. And we are queued up this evening to do. I hope that the committee supports this, this ordinance for appeal, that we address that. I appreciate you taking the time to read it. But to go and characterize and critique what's said on what I say, and Senator McElhaney and Representative Quinn said darndest things about me at points. We work together, we collaborate, but this is an issue that is important to our community. I don't know what community to identify where you live, Mr. Campione, but in the borough of Doylestown, people on our streets are concerned that slingshots, skateboards, illegal in the parks, but concerned of what it means to have the open carry in the parks. We have, as a borough, have an excellent track record on that. When we've had protests in this town, where we've had folks demonstrating, showing and celebrating their liberty by carrying out firearms, we've never taken any action on that. There's never been any negative public comment about that. And in fact, even for this evening, if someone were to open carry in Borough Hall, that's fine. It's legal. This has been a council that honors the law, but it's also a council that takes action. When we were presented with this potential liability, we acted upon it immediately. And for much more immediately than any of our Republican predecessors had, much more than any other subdivision of political government around us. And right now, we have State Representative Watson, who posed at the New Britain Borough meeting that perhaps they don't have to repeal the very same ordinances that we're repealing tonight. We're taking action on this because we're responsible for the community. We cannot have the community in a position where it can be placed in financial jeopardy or have these lawsuits to empower those attorneys, which we do not want to make attorneys wealthy and rich as part of this process. We want to have something to maintain the character of our community and protect our community, and that's why I call upon the committee to take action on these ordinances.
Yeah, Andrew Rumbold, and I'm here on behalf of both Firearms Owners Against Crime and Concerned Gun Owners of Pennsylvania. And I have some information here that I think would be helpful in framing it, so I actually brought one for each member of the committee here. So. And with your indulgence, I'd like to real quickly read a statement as well. This letter was actually drafted by Firearms Owners Against Crime. Recent changes to Pennsylvania firearms law by way of HB 80 has generated much misunderstanding from many misinformed sources. The genesis of this legislation goes back 4 decades, 1974, in response to, at that time, wildly varying calls for a plethora of different kinds of gun control at the local level. The state legislature realized it was necessary to have one set standard throughout the Commonwealth for any law that involved constitutional issues. Further, violations of this newly passed preemption law would carry a significant penalty, misdemeanor 1, under the Pennsylvania Crimes Code. Unfortunately, the logic associated with this did not take into account the resistance of government to police itself, and so local governments continued to act defiantly and illegally for the next 4 decades. In 1993, both Pittsburgh and Philadelphia heightened their violations of the law when each city passed their own version of an assault weapon ban. In each case, the district attorneys in those municipalities refused to enforce the preemption law, requiring statewide all-volunteer groups to step up and challenge each in court. The City of Pittsburgh effort cost the Allegheny County Sportsman's League over $20,000. And even though this action stopped the City of Pittsburgh assault weapon ban, this all-volunteer organization was out that money. The City of Philadelphia effort was spearheaded by the NRA and ended up costing over $250,000. The resulting court case, known as the Ortiz decision, set the benchmark for local firearms laws, but still relied upon the district attorney of each county to enforce the law. Fast forward another 2 decades and it's clear that district attorneys cannot be trusted to keep local municipalities in check. I'm going to skip down this because I don't want to take a lot of your time. 6 years ago, Kim Stolfer from Firearms Owners Against Crime and Mike McCormick, Esquire, and Harry Schneider from Pennsylvania Sportsmen's Association co-authored changes to Pennsylvania preemption law that would give standing to individuals who could be prosecuted for violating local laws. We pursued a measured, reasonable approach and avoided providing for individual crime charges should local ordinances not be repealed in a timely fashion. This would empower any individual who could be affected by the laws and would have the standing to challenge them in court. This would also provide for the recovery of legal costs associated with the litigation. Representative Darrell Metcalf agreed to introduce this legislation as he and many of his peers we're getting deluged with problems with these local laws. The recent drama that led up to the passage of HB 80 illustrates the depths to which certain groups want to use laws as a bludgeon against the lawful exercise of constitutional freedom. The passage of this legislation also illustrates the support in a bipartisan fashion that exists in the legislature for one set standard throughout the Commonwealth of laws. It also shows the frustration of legislators regarding the political grandstanding and demagoguery of some legislators at the local level who ignore the obvious limitations on their power and the impact that these excesses can have on the average individual. The cornerstone of the American judicial system is the concept known as the rule of law, and that everyone, government and citizens alike, is accountable to it. The highest law we have is the Constitution, and if local municipalities can be allowed to toy willy-nilly with the Constitution by enacting laws that clearly impact the exercise of constitutional freedom, then our republic is in jeopardy. There must be some mechanism to hold government accountable, and HB 80, or Act 192, is that mechanism. It is a sad day when government has to pass a law requiring government to obey the law. Pennsylvania Preemption Law, Title 18, Section 6120, as amended by HB 80, empowers citizens who could be affected by these laws to take independent legal action against them. This standard still requires that the legal action must be upheld in the court of law prior to the payment of any legal fees. Considering the significant number of municipalities which are now reviewing their local ordinances for compliance with state preemption law, it is apparent that many of these municipalities were aware of these laws and continued to maintain them in defiance of the law because of their awareness of the unwillingness of the courts to hold them accountable. On January 5th, 2015, a new chapter in accountability opens for local municipalities to abide by the law. We hope they choose the right path and will gladly assist them in this endeavor. In the end, the law must be obeyed. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Thames?
I'd like to address our fearless borough president, who's a perfect example of the statement from Louis XIV, the state is me. He mixed up I and we together as if they were one and the same thing. We would suggest that he read the Constitution. It would be helpful.
I think my copy of the Constitution in my car.
Read it sometime.
I have a question. Is Berkeley Playground considered a public park?
Yes.
Are the tennis courts off of West State Street public usage?
Yes.
The same? War Memorial, can they, or is it public
West Street
usage?
or West State Street?
West Street, going down the
Yes,
hill.
that's a borough park.
And the third one, War Memorial Field, is that considered a public area where people can gather? Is it parks and
A
recreation?
portion of it is a borough park. A portion of it is land owned by the borough, but run by the Central Bucks School District.
Okay. My concern, and I have a question now because of those three areas. I live catty corner to Berkeley Playground. And if there is someone who is allowed under what people in the Second Amendment want, and they can carry openly, what is to keep someone whose mental state is not all that great and is questionable to go into Berkeley Park? There's a school adjacent to Berkeley Park. There's two schools adjacent to the tennis courts down there on West Street. There's a school and another school down the hill from War Memorial Field. And my concern is if someone can waltz in there, pack in their pistol in the open, and maybe they're not all there, the lights are out somewhere, who's to stop that person to go into one of these schools? That is my question and concern.
Are you asking about the distinction between the schools,
Well, they're so
laws
close.
governing schools and?
They all abut each other, especially the tennis courts down by Lenape and Berkeley Playground by the Catholic school. They abut each other.
I defer
What's
to
the
you,
concern?
Well, I mean, as a practical matter, I don't think the ability to carry in the park versus the ability to carry on the street is going to change that dynamic. If you have somebody who's intent on going into a building with a weapon, it's just a practical matter, they're going to be able to go into the building with a weapon. And I don't think the location of the park changes that.
If they're in the park and there's children out there on recess, isn't that kind of
May I
fun
make
for
one
them?
comment?
Anybody has a
Either
gun,
that
never do what they
person
want,
is
if they're
a
bad.
prohibited individual
Where?
or is not. The law is very clear. That if that person is prohibited, then he cannot have a firearm anywhere. And if he's not prohibited, he may.
Yeah, nobody knows whether he's prohibited or not. I would suggest that you call the police if you see him, because he's going to be doing other things other than going into the school that's going to attract your attention to it. If you see somebody that's openly carrying and he's acting in a different way than everybody else, call the police. We will respond and we will talk to him. If he's not there, then he's not going to be there. And he's not going to have a weapon, right? But if he's going to be taking the crisis, if he is, and he's legitimately there, he's not going to go into the school and do something. That's what I would tell you. Just call the police. Anybody that sees any kind of circumstances like that, call the police, we will respond.
My name is Mike Sorman. I actually live in Warminster, but I do frequent Doylestown a lot, so this is a concern of mine too. And to rebut, it's kind of like what you had said. If somebody is going to do harm, they're going to do harm. We already have laws that say that you can't carry a firearm onto a school grounds, but yet there's school shootings all the time. Those signs mean nothing to anybody who is intent on harming another person. So it's the Pennsylvania State Constitution states that we have the right to bear arms and they shall not be questioned, period. All right? If you're mentally unstable and you go to try to buy a gun, if you have a history of that, that will red flag. That will red flag. We're all, it's like anybody here, including myself, we're all law-abiding firearm owners. So we don't mean harm. We're here to protect ourselves. We're here to protect, with another person. If you should need us, we're everywhere. You just, it's like most of us don't open carry for the sheer fact that you don't want to be a target to a bad guy. Who's the first guy that's hurt in a bank robbery? The armed guard, because they could physically see his weapon. I personally would never open carry, but it's your right if you want to. To see somebody open carry, it's, who cares? I think if they are, it's like openly carrying, you could probably be safe that there is no intent to do harm, because the element of surprise is not there. So, I mean, I don't know what else I could say on it, but, it's like I do carry all the time. I carry everywhere I go, except where I can't. It's like, and I've actually had great experiences going into the courthouse here, and I genuinely mean it, where I've had to lock up the firearm, and the cops have been more than welcoming. They're, it's like thanking me for carrying, and, it's like it's a great thing to hear. I just don't want to see our Constitution get trampled on. So, all right, thank you.
I'm going to take this half when I live in town. I mean, I don't want to see the Constitution get trampled on either, but I frequent the parks with my grandchildren, with my dog, and the borough parks, and I don't want to be there with people walking around with guns, whatever their intent is. It's very unnerving to me, and I think it would be unnerving to a lot of people. And I don't know why it's necessary. Hasn't been lawful for all these years, and why does it have to be lawful now?
One of the major concerns with policemen carrying guns is that you have to protect the gun. Yes. Because if you don't, it's going to be used against you, or somebody else. So you have, when you go to a scene with a gun, you know there's at least one gun there, and that's a danger. You have to be concerned about that, no matter where you are or what you're doing. Some kid always comes up and tries to touch your gun and try to play with it. And you can't have that. And I had a personal friend who was a police officer with me in Philadelphia, who was killed with his partner's gun. And the guy that killed him, he was there because he was a bigamist. And he died because this guy was a bigamist. That's stupid. So just know that you have to know.
Yeah, Haynes, I'm a new resident in Doylestown.